Hello, everybody, and welcome. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that means it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me this week is my co-host, Tom Lyons. Oh, your real name. How you doing, Tom? Yeah, keep people on their toes.
I don't even know how to respond to that. Hey, friends.
Exactly. Also joining us, of course, is the one, the only, the godfather, the esteemed patron saint of all things Warhammer. It's OnceBitten360. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
We are honored to have you on tonight, and of course we have you on to talk about some Ninth Age stuff, and that is going to be our feature segment. We're gonna get in deep. We're digging deep on the Ninth Age today on Warhammer Weekly, so settle in, folks. But of course, as usual, we're gonna start off with some news, some rumors, some conjecture, some tinfoil hatting, and other things that probably won't ever come true, but we're still gonna talk about them. Tom, kick us off.
And if they are true, we're going to claim that you heard it here first.
That's right. That's how it works.
So I'll start with we have the big release of Ninth Age. Obviously, we have the show, and the beta has rolled out basically for all the Army books. We have coming up this in December. We also have the version 1.0 releasing. Is that correct, Obi?
Yeah. Sometime in December. I should know when, but I don't.
Awesome. So super exciting. We've obviously in prep for the show, we've went over a bunch of stuff, and it looks fantastic and encouraging and terrifying all at the same time. So we'll talk more about that. The other big news this week, which dropped literally like right after our show ended last week, is the Archeon model. Like, it's here, friends, and he is not riding Galrock.
He is not. Unfortunately, he is riding a big thing. We're going to screen share on that. So there he is. This picture has been shared around a lot, of course, but that's the close zoom in. The three-headed. This is his horse, and clearly his horse got the demonic gifts. I'd like to think, because Archeon is so obsessed with being sort of the mortal champion of chaos, that the Chaos Gods offered it to him, and he was like, "Nah, give it to the horse." And so that's why he's the horse all mutated.
It could be his subpar performance in the end times that they decided to give it to his horse instead. Like, here, the MVP's over here, not him.
Well, he did wrestle a god to a basic standstill, so I mean that's pretty decent.
Yeah, kinda, but he did fail. Let's be honest.
That's fair.
Like, you don't know what his horse was doing that entire fight. Like he was down there with the, but the horse was probably like rampaging through Middenheim.
Yeah, you're saying like off camera, the horse was just murdering everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And so the gods were like, now that's an MVP of the end times.
I'll believe it. Obviously, we've got the three heads of the three still present Chaos Gods. There's a nice Tzeentch head, a weird Nurgle head, and a Khorne bull-like head. And that immediately led people to feel bad for no Slaanesh presence. But as we can see right here, she is still around. We still got the little symbol of Slaanesh on the shield. So
there's double tails on it as well. Do you have a pull out of it?
I do. There we go.
Which is kind of Vermin Lord-esque.
Yeah, it's a really interesting model. Just like, of course, it has the standard GW pose. So I saw somebody on the internet put together like every model jumping with 1 foot in the air like this, like they're all going up to dunk. And it's a very popular pose. But yeah, I like that. It's a lizardish tail, but double. You know, he's definitely a big, beefy torso. I mean, I really love it. Obi, what do you think of this model? What did you think of the Archeon model when you saw this?
It's beautiful. It's a little cartoony. But yeah, it's nice.
What do you think of that sword?
I agree with both those.
What do you think about the sword?
It's what the Games Workshop does well, though. I mean, they really do create some beautiful models.
Yeah, absolutely, especially at this size, right? It's just there are very few other companies out there making really big, especially like monstrous type models like this that look this good. There are a few, but they don't make them in the number and the quality and the range that GW does, I don't think. And yeah, I love this guy. Tom, you asked about the sword. You're saying you think it's a little unimpressive?
It just looks unusual. Does that make sense? Like, maybe it's because they're trying to make it flaming. Maybe like it's very blocky for Archeon.
It almost looks like a short sword from this angle.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Can you go back?
It seems not big enough, right?
Can you go back a photo real quick?
Yeah, there you go.
So he doesn't feel the need to compensate, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he's here to do some work. He's confident in himself. He knows he's packing the heat. He doesn't need to carry a big sword. He's fine with it.
Now the horns on his head, that's a whole nother issue.
Sure. Yeah. Boy. Oh boy. I think probably the first thing I'll do with this guy is clip that sword off and put a much bigger sword on. Yeah, I agree with you. I like that.
Gonna go get the Demon Lord sword?
Yeah, exactly. I've already maybe like the Soul Grinder sword. Just really go over the top, full like Buster sword. I mean, he's Archaon. Why not?
Absolutely.
All right. So yeah, there he is. And no exact date of when he's coming yet, but I suspect it's going to be not this. It won't go on pre-order this. We know it won't go on pre-order this coming week because of what you're about to talk about.
Yep.
But my suspicion is it will be on pre-order next week. So.
Certainly. We have paint coming.
Yes.
Changes to GW's paint range, which let me just say is pretty terrible. Because like what I mean by that is that it looks like they are eliminating some colors, and they are moving some colors from standard glazes or standard paints into dry paints.
Yep.
So it looks like they are eliminating some options. So for those that have armies that are using any, like the Hoeth Blue, for example, get it now, because it's going to be a dry paint here in a week or two.
Yikes. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to soapbox on this. I really don't. But Citadel, if you care enough about your paints to paint in any serious way, I really just don't believe in using Citadel paints. And ultimately, it's not a question of even quality. You know, Dr. Faust Painting Clinic, he went through a bunch of paints a while back, and he said the reason that he supports Vallejo is because Vallejo is a paint company. They make paints. That's what they do. Their paints aren't tied to a game or to a line or to anything like that. It's not that they'll never change, but they tend to change them rarely. And when they do, the old colors tend to stay around. They themselves make their own paints. It's not shipped off to somebody else to do. Like, Games Workshop isn't actually producing these. It's a third party doing it, you know, under that makes it specifically for them. And, you know, to me, that's really the thing. You've got that dependability. I mean, like I said, I'm not trying to soapbox. If you love Citadel and you take these paint pots to the grave, hey, cool, more power to you. I completely support that. Anybody painting, I'm good with it. But it's this kind of stuff that just gives me the willies on Citadel paints.
Like any changes to paint lines, like Reaper does the same thing occasionally, and that makes me very anxious. Like, I have moved towards Vallejo because I'm afraid of like colors being removed.
How picky are you, OB, on having, you know, your consistent colors across your army? You know, if you have to, like, if there were a change in the middle and you didn't have a paint you needed, does that bother you, or are you just like, man, whatever, as long as I can get close?
Ooh, it's bothering my OCD right now. The color would have to match. Now, if I could get it close enough that if I didn't look too closely, I wouldn't notice it, I'd be okay. But I would come close to repainting that whole color over the whole army.
I don't disagree with that. I really don't.
Yep.
Like, it's
Agreed.
I get it. Yeah.
Yep. I agree completely.
Also, what do we need this many dry paints for? These things are like marginally useful at best. I don't get it.
Like, I don't understand what made GW think, you know what? Let's do some more dry paints.
I haven't bought any of the dry paints yet. I assume it's for dry brushing.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So what? Maybe they're trying to push that as a technique.
I think maybe they're trying to speak to more the simple hobbyist, because dry brushing is sort of the first technique that you really learn. Like that and just applying shades as washes are really your first two techniques you learn when you're hobbying, beyond like put paint on miniature. And so I think they're trying to, you know, make it easier for those new players. That's fine, but you can dry brush with pretty much any consistency of paint. You can't paint with this dry paint.
Right.
Right. Like, re-liquidizing this stuff can be done, but it ain't easy.
Yeah, and there are things that you can do, like, obviously people complain about, like, the dustiness of dry brushing, but, like, you can mitigate that through another wash and other things like that. So,
Sure.
So it's likely that they're just, like, if you look at their technique manuals, that's what they're going for, is they're going for, like, the minimum number of steps to have tabletop-worthy models. Of, like, base coat, wash, dry brush, wash, done.
Well, that's fine. That's still ahead of their 90s paint guides, which were 3 steps: paint, shade, complete. And complete was one of the steps. So,
True.
I'm just saying. That's where I came into the hobby.
It's disappointing. Like, if anything, let's see some more like new technical paints, or let's see some more like shades. Like
Agreed.
if they really want to go into a territory that people would find valuable.
Yeah, play to their strengths. On the bright side, you've got the whole air range, so that added a whole nice color, or,
Yep.
selection of what I think are actually quality paints. I'm sorry, OB, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say that I really do like their new technical paints.
Yeah.
I like them a lot. I mean, I was painting the Garden of Moor set and just having fun making my fences look old and rusty, and they turned. I mean, I never could have achieved that effect with my paint skill without those technical paints. So yeah,
Oh, I stand behind those technical line. Absolutely. The typhus corrosion, the nilic oxide, I assume we're getting some heavy use from you there?
And the Rise of Rust.
the Rise of Rust,
Yep.
yeah, and the blood. I think I went through a whole bottle of blood on my Beastman army. I mean, it just way over the top. It's ridiculous. There's blood everywhere. Yeah.
It is a great paint. Yeah, I stand behind their technical line. So, like, everything I said earlier about their paints, that was specifically to their normal, like, base layer, color line. Their technical paints, their shades, their glazes are actually pretty top-notch, and I like them.
Agreed completely. I will say that just as a side note, as we close out the news bit on the paints, for those that are interested in tinfoil hatting or reading tea leaves, curiously, they have included an Emmerich blue on the coloring. So they've slapped a character's name onto one of those. Yes, that's the one right there.
You're saying this is a definite sign that Emmerich will return in the New Age.
Sure,
Right.
if that's how you want to read that. No, just that it's interesting because.
Well, you know who else is on one of these? Oh, who's right here?
I know, Slanesh Gray.
Oh, not that she's ever went anywhere in 40K, so whatever, that's fine.
Yep. Do we want to talk about the? Is it news the Seraphon? You mentioning that the Slanesh Seraphon.
Yeah, I feel like we should cover it real quick here. The other things that are going to be on pre-order are this big case thing here.
Nobody's buying that.
Yep. It's a thing. This is also going to be a thing. Hey, it's the news. And boom, that's right. You too can have your own special tape measure made of, I am positive, 100% pure Sigmarite. So.
Yes, it needs to be at 20 pounds.
Sure. So is this like a $30 tape measure? Is that what this is going to boil down to in the US?
That is a $30. Yep, that's what you're staring at. Yep, $30 tape measure, right?
So OB, how many of these should I put you down for as an order immediately?
At least 20.
How many?
At least.
Go ahead.
Hey, I'm roofing my house with one of those.
Sure.
I mean, I can't tell what that vent-looking thing is. Does it at least, like, if you pull it out, does it at least stay out? Or for $20, does it just whip back and cut your finger?
Well, if you let it go and that metal tip whips back and cuts you, that actually just infects you with the power of Sigmar.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. Like, you lose your soul, but you get some sweet armor.
Yeah. Every time you get cut in the game, you get a free reroll.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just the power of Sigmar. All right, so you wanted to, I think that's all the pictures I have to share on that.
Yeah, that's the current release coming up.
Yes.
Yeah, so as a brief note, was that Ashicus that mentioned that?
I think it was Merrick that mentioned it.
Oh, yeah, it was Merrick. Yep.
Yes. So yeah, just a quick brief note talking about Slanesh. I haven't picked up the Seraphon book yet. I really got to read anything in it, but there's apparently a note in there or something. Who do you remember who was talking to who?
I don't.
That's fine. Two characters are talking to each other. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Two people, they're in the Warhammer world.
And for those that are 9th Age watchers that haven't followed Age of Sigmar at all, Seraphon are lizardmen.
Sure. Or furry tickle stuff. Your choice. But at any rate, the two characters are talking to each other, and one of them, it's like a Slan talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And they tell him that, I know what happened to Slanesh. She has suffered a fate worse than death. So, Tom, would you like to say what you think your theory is on that? What is the fate worse than death that has happened to Slanesh?
I think it's fairly obvious. I think that Slaanesh has been trapped in a mortal body.
All right.
And if I were to take a guess who that is, I'm putting money on Marathi.
Okay. All right. OB, have you got a guess on the fate worse than death? You want to take a wild swing at this?
Who was his mortal enemy? Which god? Was that Korn?
Who is? Yes, Korn is Slaanesh's enemy. Yes.
Yeah. So somehow under the dominion of Korn.
Oh, nice. Like trapped in the brass citadel or something there.
Right. Yeah.
All right. I like that.
Uh,
I am going to go for. She was driving around in New Jersey and got lost. And bad cell phone coverage because she's got like Boost Mobile or something. Of course, Slaanesh would have like Boost, and can't get a call out to the Chaos Gods to figure out how to get back. That's my vote. You heard it here first. Slaanesh currently lost in New Jersey.
As a side note, I would also accept as a possible answer no orgasms.
Sure, yeah, that's the fate worse than death. Unable to experience pleasure. That's fine. All right, I accept. All right. What other news items?
Yeah. So one of our rumor mongers came through this last week also, and suggested that after the Archeon, we're going to see some special Chaos Knights, whatever that means, followed by a Tzeentch character and a battle tome for them.
Yeah, I think the implication was that the
to
Knights were specifically Tzeentch-y.
Yes. Yeah. So you heard it here. If that happens, you heard it here first. Tzeentch as the next release.
Sure, yeah, you've heard it here first, or on the internet since like December of last year. But who's counting? It's fine.
And that all that should be before next January, when supposedly more things are going to drop in January. We don't know exactly what those are yet.
Yep. We know there's some 40K releases in there because they've spotted like new Blood Angels chaplains and a couple weird characters that don't exist currently in the line in the new Visions magazine. So there's going to be clearly, like leading up and in through Christmas, my guess is we're going to see a lot of interspersed releases amongst both games because, it's Christmas. Like, now's the time, man. Shotgun it out. Let's go. Like, you know, if their target audience is really people in that younger age cohort, well, get them to have their parents buy them stuff. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so it needs to be out in the next 4 weeks.
Yep.
Exactly.
I saw this conversation earlier, by the way, about videos. That if you're going to do any special videos, you want to make sure you get them up around by mid-December because your views skyrocket from like December 15th to January 5th. I don't know if you've ever paid attention to that, but I noticed it. It's just like people are home and bored. They have nothing to do.
Just watching YouTube. Yeah, I just got to burn off some hours. I'll note that. I got to line up a bunch of programming then for that time of the year. I'm just going to do painting marathons, just paint a sode straight. So maybe that time of year, I'll find some time when I'm not working, I'll take a day off, and that's when I'll do my 24-hour paint a sode. We'll just cycle in guests. I think that sounds like a good plan.
That's your pro tip. You're welcome.
You heard. Hey, look, if there's anybody on the internet I am going to take tips from about getting views, it's going to be you, sir. So that's all I'm saying. I wouldn't take it from anybody else, but from you. That is good advice.
Yeah, I'm still in the bottom 1% percentile of YouTube channels.
Sure. Like, yeah, there are people who are just literally like yelling at their cat, and that just got like 30 times the amount of views that like the best Warhammer video got, right? So yeah, it's just a guy yelling at a cat.
It's true. So final news pieces. We have Mordheim, our newer version, dropped this last week. We updated some stuff. We changed some of the rallying rules and some of the battle shock rules to streamline all that, simplify.
Also did some overall army balancing on cost of like recruitment. Yep. So that's all good to go. As usual, the link for Mordheim AOS will be down below. If you are interested in Mordheim or your AOS, or you don't like either one of those maybe, but you feel like we're hoping it's peanut butter and chocolate, so give it a look and maybe you'll find something you like there. It can be a fun way to experience AOS in a more structured format that classically we'd like to think of it as basically 100% Mordheim and 100% AOS. So it's a lot of fun. I have played many games of it, and I've certainly had a grand old time, and it feels a lot like old Mordheim, which I love. So there you go.
And then finally, there was a new Kings of War model that dropped.
Yeah, there was like a fun Kings of War model I saw released, and Kings. There's a lot of people who are playing Warhammer who are moving and or incorporating Kings of War into their thing, into their gaming rotation. And I thought these guys are really neat. Look at these guys; they're fun. They're like zombie trolls or zombie ogres.
Can you zoom in for us?
Yeah. Sorry, let me zoom in there a little bit. There we go. It's not the best big picture. I apologize. That was the biggest one I could find. But hopefully that's visible. But you can see like the nice rotting away flesh and some innards spilling out. I thought these guys were pretty cool looking.
Yeah, I like them.
Yeah.
I like those a lot.
I thought those would be fun, like stand-in miniatures for maybe like crypt horrors or anything like that. Maybe even some really fun screwed up chaos ogres or chaos trolls could be a really good replacement. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, for that open flesh, you could do some Nurgle stuff around those that stuff, and that might actually look good.
Oh yeah, if you had a Nurgle chaos, Nurgle walk army, these are your chaos ogres or chaos trolls, yeah. And then also here's this guy. He's not new, but he goes along with it quite well. Oops, sorry, that's the Archaon rules. There he is. So this is actually like out of their board game or something, like Dungeon Explorer or Dungeon something.
Yeah, they did what GW should have done and had an entry-level board game.
Right. So in this board game, you get this character model zombie ogre troll thing, which I love this guy, and what a great like champion or leader of the unit this dude would be. I mean, it's clearly just a more special version of the same thing. I thought he was pretty awesome. So I'm sure if you search around, you could probably pick up just him without the rest of the board game. I'm sure you can get him in individual places. So yeah, there you go.
You recognize the background there? That's the GW castle wall.
Well, I think at this point those are just everywhere, right? They were handed out free in the mail for so long that now it's just all over the place. How's your castle coming, Obi? How's the Eternal project?
It's still eternal. I touch it every December usually. Seriously, this will be my third December in a row to work on it.
Yeah, it's good that you got your hobby spirit back right here when it's castle time. Oh, I did have the Archaon rules, and just real quick, we'll zoom in on that one number there. That's the big 2-0, 20 wounds on Archaon on his dragon. He's rocking some wounds there. Still not the most wounds in Age of Sigmar, as obviously that belongs to the War Mammoth.
I would say, is that it?
Yeah, the War Mammoth still got him beat. It's an elephant. It's huge. It's a chaos elephant. But yes. I think this is going to be your year, Obi. I think you're going to finish off that castle this year. I've got a good feeling about it. It's going to be an amazing accomplishment. You've earned it.
Yeah, we'll see. The sad thing is I recognized it because I'm like, I have painted those bricks so many times, brick by brick by brick.
This is truly going to be your Sistine Chapel ceiling right here. I mean that's what this is. So I think that's as good of a segue as any to transition into our hobby time. And Obi, you're our guest. So what's currently on your table? What are you working on right now?
Well, like I just finished the Garden of Moor. I was very happy about that. My next project, because I'm so involved with the Beastmen, Beast Herd book with Ninth Age, there's a lot of different builds I want to try, but I don't like. I prefer not to play models that are not painted. I mean, I'm not above it. I do it all the time, but I prefer not to. And my Beastmen army, they just need a lot of love. I mean, I need to do a lot of rebasing on them. I need to acquire 20 or 30 centaurs. I want to build a centaur army. I think there's a lot of I want to round out that army. I did, by the way, Matiram, obviously. I bought all of his undead models.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
so now, did that include old Lord T's models? So have you now become the inheritor of some of Lord Tremendous's models?
Yes. I haven't even looked at it, but he told me, he's like, yeah, no, some of these, he has like those weird bases, looks like, I don't know how to describe them, but I know Lord T's are on that. So like with these YouTube famous models making the rounds, and now they're here. They've come home to Papa.
That's right. Well, that's great. I haven't really taken a look at the Tomb Kings. I know that's not their name anymore in the Ninth Age. I didn't get a look at their special rules yet. I remember last time or I remember in your previous discussions you were looking at that sort of a thing, pseudo-combined undead-ish, but is that still where you're leaning with this new acquisition? You looking to have that as an option in the future?
Yeah, I haven't decided yet how I'm going to design the army. I'm still leaning towards having the same design for Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings. I just don't know if I can do it because I kind of want the Vampire Counts to be dark and gritty, and I like the Tomb Kings. I kind of like that desert kind of look to them. So I don't know. I got a buddy into the hobby who loves to shop around on eBay. He has bought 6 armies in the last month for about $1,200 total.
Yep.
And I might just say screw it and then have him buy the rest of my Vampire Counts army and the rest of my Tomb Kings army. It'll be less than what I would pay to buy one.
Sure. It's definitely that time. I know Tom and I have been into some acquisitions as well. So yeah, it's a buyer's market right now, to say the least. I mean, stop selling your army, people.
Yeah, seriously. Like I picked up like about over $1,000 of dwarves for $175.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
So, no, but that's awesome. So one of the things I loved, by the way, Obi, in your hobby time there of what you're working on, is the following sentence: I need to pick up some centaurs. I assume those are to make centigores or whatever. I don't know what they're called now, but they're centigores. And that is.
Hello?
Nope. He froze on us.
He couldn't handle the centigores.
No, he couldn't. How about you start that one again, Vince?
What's that?
We didn't hear you at all.
Yeah, you cut out right after you said centaurs, but they must be centigores, and then you cut out.
Oh, how nice. That's fun. I never went out on myself. Okay, what I said is, I love that you said that, and I assume they were to make centigores. And I don't think anybody in the history of Warhammer, since they were called the Beasts of Chaos, has actually ever uttered the sentence, "I need a lot of centigores." So I'm happy to hear that can be uttered now in a non-ironic fashion.
No, I'll talk about that more because you gave me some questions to answer, and those come up in it. So it might make more sense later. But yeah, there's a lot of things on my wish list. It's been so long since I've wanted to spend money on the hobby, and now it's like hitting with a rush. And my she's looking at me like, you can stop.
All right, so here's the question. Are you going to go for like the legit, or as close as that can be, I guess, Centigore model? Like, is that what you're looking for? Or because it's sort of a new age, are you going to cast a wider net and you're interested in any kind of like Centaur model that you could convert and play with and paint appropriately?
Well, I've already lined up to where the guys, I already have lined up. They'll be in the mail to me pretty soon. And yeah, it's going to be the old GW's Centigore models, which I like. They just don't have a lot of variety.
Yeah.
So I might do some, if nothing else, just some weapon swaps or something like that, just to make them look a little different.
Sure. Yeah, honestly, they were some of the better models out of the range. I just agree with you. They're a little too samey, right? Like they didn't. It was kind of before they got more dynamic. If you think of like the Sisters of the Thorn or whatever, right? That's how they started going with those units, where they're all in like different positions.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're going way back. That kind of thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to see a modern Centigore. Boy, wouldn't that be a dream come true? Just because they're a cool unit, but.
Yeah, well, I think the really cool way to do it is buy a lot of the old Marauder horsemen and take a gore top and do all that kind of stuff. And I think those are great. This is just easier. So
Sure. Sure, absolutely. All right, so Tom, what about you, sir? What's on your desk?
I am still doing dwarves. I'm still doing my my October pledge for Age of Sigmar.
The budget of Sigmar.
The budget of Sigmar, yes. But I'm quickly closing in. I'm doing basically highlighting at this point for that lot of 30-some dwarves. So
right.
yeah. So I'm hoping. I think at the rate I'm at, I may actually be able to get done with my November pledge before the end of November. So I'll be fresh starting into December.
Nice.
Nice.
I like it. I as well. I'm working on some Beastmen because I finished up my budget of Sigmar for the month. So I'm just working on this guy this Beast Lord. He's coming along nicely. Oh, there he is. Yay. Yeah. It's fun. These guys are actually fun to paint. I will say, these like metal Beast Lord characters are way nicer than I would have imagined. Like, they have a lot of really good quality and are some of the better metal character figs that I've painted in GW. I just really like them. They look nice. They have good, like, I like their proportions. I like the way that they alternate cloth and metal and organic stuff like that. They're really nice. So it's been fun to paint. I didn't think am having fun hobbying on Beastmen would be a sentence I ever uttered, but there you go. My life surprises us sometimes. So, with that out of the way, let us turn to the main segment of the night, and that is to the Ninth Age, which, as we mentioned at the top, has had its beta release in a month advance of its full-fledged release, as it's sort of the feedback process continues, and I think one of the most important. Sorry, I'm just looking over here at my questions. I think one of the most important things to say is that, and Opie, if I speak out of turn here in any way, stop me or correct me. But certainly my impression of this is that, version 1.0 isn't where it's called, right? It's not like, oh, there it is, and we're done. This seemed to be a continually evolving community project where feedback is solicited and goes through the normal reviews and such, and over time things continue to be refined and evolved. Am I correct there?
Yes. I would say the difference is, I think once we get to version 1.0, there's going to be a very hard line in the sand, and they say, okay, we're not going to add anything new except for some periodic basis, like maybe once a year. We'll revisit the books, and because for the Beast Herd book, there's already 2 or 3 units that we would love to add, but it's just not possible. But even after 1.0, if they notice there's tournaments going on, and these 3 armies are dominating tournaments, and these 3 armies are consistently at the bottom, then they step in and they modify it. So that's either really good or really bad for you, But certainly the focus is on trying to keep it relatively balanced.
I think that's a good attitude, because I do think putting a limit on it and saying, like, sorry, we're only going to update this once an X, whatever that X happens to be, is really the right answer, because you need to build up a large enough data set, right, to actually be making a strong decision on this. You can't take 1, 2, 3, 5 tournaments and say, oh, that's definitely what's happening in the meta. I mean, you need a large set of data. So I have a lot of respect for them willing to do that, to draw that line in the sand.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny, because we have forums. I'm very, very active on the Beast Herd forum. And when people say, I've played 2 games and this army just can't win, and I'm like, I mean, whenever I start a new army, I don't win for a long time. Like, I got to warm up to it. I got to figure out what I'm doing. And we have other people, going to tournaments and doing really, really well with it. So it's tough to know what feedback to listen to. Do you have enough a variety of feedback to really pay attention to it?
Now, I saw your first battle report was up with Ninth Age, and that was really cool. Watch that. That was against Empire, right? It was Beastmen. You're playing the Beast Herds. It's not, they're not called Empire, I guess, but Empire of Man. I don't know, whatever the.
It's Empire. Yeah, it's Empire something.
Yes, human people who have a steam tank and knights, and that was not the best game for the Beastmen out of the gate, but it was still it still looked like a very fun game, pretty pitched battle back and forth. I thought that was good. You clearly did not had some very bad luck at some bad moments in traditional Once Bitten style. We got the "Are you freaking kidding me?" On the double failed ambush, which I thought was good. Effectively the double ones. So. I liked that. Have you gotten to play some more games of it since then?
I haven't. I have. And first of all, it's about that game. The purpose of the game was to learn the rules and just have fun, and it was complete success. It was the most fun I've had in a while playing Warhammer. Maybe because everything was so new, right? And it's like a new toy. I went the next night and played with Tyrion, but he wanted to play 8th edition because I think he's just getting out of the hobby. I have a game set up tomorrow with Ninth Age. And I think it's going to be against. It was going to be ogres, and I think he said he was going to change it at the last minute. Anyway, but it's against what will certainly be a beautifully painted army. And I'm still just trying a totally different kind of list. There's some people putting together lists saying how competitive can I make it, can this win, and I I need to be doing that. I just don't feel like doing it. I want to play with some of the toys that we designed. So I put together a themed Minotaur army. So.
Gotcha. Well, that'll be cool. Is that going to be? Are you going to battle report the Minotaur assault there?
Oh yeah. Everything I can. I need content. You know, something to post about.
Well,
So,
no, we'll look forward to that. That's going to be good. I mean, classically, you had a pretty nice Minotaur force. Even in the old world, I remember there was definitely a long trajectory there where you were trying like a heavily Minotaur influenced force in 8th edition. So it's good to see that come back again.
yeah, well, I could only back in the day. I think I have 12 regular Minotaurs, and that rounded out my force nicely. And now you're able to do. I mean, I really I need double that number. So I'm putting other stuff on my list because I don't have enough Minotaurs. But you can have a lot of Minotaurs.
Oof, that's a lot. You need to. That's going to be a search eBay and find some deals on that one. You don't want to be buying 24 Minotaurs at retail unless you're taking out like a small business loan or something. Like that's going to be a mortgage your house.
I was going to. The wife said no.
Got to draw the line somewhere, sure. All right, so let's turn to some. I sent you some questions, and I thought this might be the best way to go about this. So I'll kind of just shoot out the question. You can give me what you think about it, and we can kind of discuss. So the first question that I gave you was, what are the 3, in your mind, biggest changes in 9th from, let's say, the previous edition? And what do you think is the most important items they have kept the same or similar? So in other words, what's different, what's the same, that you think is really tangible and important, right?
Right. You know, I don't know, because it's funny, because they were trying to keep it as close to 8th as they could. Some people have complained, and including me at one point, that they were changing more things than needed to. The thing that changed the most, and I can tell you, when I played the game, the only time where I had to have the rulebook open, they changed the magic phase quite a bit. Most importantly, they toned down the uber spells. So the thinking is they don't want the game to be won just by 6 dicing a spell. Boom, game over. So they toned down the spells. They put a limit of 5 instead of 6 dice is the maximum you can cast. The miscast table is a sliding scale based on the number of power dice you use. So if you're throwing 1 or 2 dice at spells, you can't dimensionally cascade and get sucked down the rope and all that kind of crap. So the magic phase, and there are other things as well. Like you can have aided dispels. Like if you have 2 level 2s, you can have one of them give a +1 to the other. You know, so it makes it viable to have a few low-level casters instead of always taking a level 4. But the magic phase is fairly different. The other phase of the game, I mean, some things changed, but I don't notice them. I didn't need the book even. I mean, the movement's pretty much the same, shooting's the same, combat's pretty close. You know, a lot of that didn't really change. So my number 1 for that is the magic phase. So any comments on that before I move on?
I did notice that it was like, yeah, I mean, in reading through it and in watching it develop, because every time they sort of, you know, kind of put out a new dot version throughout this that they sort of set out for review, I've always kind of looked at it, and I agree with you there. It did seem to come back some. Like when I first read through it the very first time, and this was a while back, I was like, man, this feels like they're changing a lot. You know, reading through this most recent one, I thought, that's not as far, but with the magic phase, I was like, this is a totally different animal. You know what I mean? Like, this just feels completely different. And I mean, which at the same time, let me say this, that's fair. Who cares? The magic phase has changed in Warhammer every single edition of Warhammer that has come out. Okay? It has never been a consistent experience.
Yeah, they used to have cards and stuff.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you used to have the deck of cards, and then we went to dice per wizard, right? I mean, there's no, unlike a lot of things, like weapon skill, ballistic skill, these kind of things, you might argue those are traditionally what sort of is at the core of Warhammer, because they've always kind of been around, or at least going back a long, long way. But Magic has never had any consistency. So I think that, if anything, they did have the most leverage to change it there without feeling like they're insulting tradition. I wonder if it's not, honestly, a little too harsh. I honestly think if you look at that, and you're a reasonable, and you want to be a utility maximizer, you will never use more than 3 dice on a spell. Like, there's just, the risk is far too high. And so what you're like, so conversely, what that incentivizes is a lot of spam casting of smaller spells, right? Yeah. So the most you can get out of like your hexes, your augments, your small things, the most you can spread that out and get that to work for you is the better.
I would agree with that, and I would double down on it and say that the spells that you might need more dice don't seem quite worth the price you're going to pay for it. Like I said, they're not the uber spells you're used to. They're not. I mean, they're good, no doubt, but they're not that amazingly good. At least most of them aren't.
The risk you take, because when you do go at that 5 dice, like, and you miscast, not only can you still be dispelled, right, which is a relevant thing. Like, you're going to total power, as it were, the old terms. Like, you're going to miscast, but you're not irresistible. It can still be dispelled. So.
Right. Yeah. So I think they were trying to take out things that were a little too random, where you can just be playing a horrible game and you win because something weird happens. They were trying to get rid of that, I think. There are fewer crutches in the game. Like, stubborn is much harder to come by, you know. So anyway, number 2 on the number of changes. This isn't necessarily a rules change, because like I said, I should say, I mean, there's some other rules, like hand weapon and shield is a viable option because it makes you -1 to hit in combat. And then let's see, spears offer killing blow if charged in the front by cavalry and stuff.
Yep. Also, the big one in my mind, by the way, in that same regard, was the steadfast thing, right? Like the way flanking and rear charges work, upping the bonus you get from doing those things. And I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead of you, but like that, your weapon talk made me think of it, because that parry bonus is only to the front, right?
Right. Yeah, huge. Yeah, I think I just noticed today, because I think they tweaked it again, that like if you charge somebody in the flank, you know, it's always been +1, but now it's like as long as you have at least 1 rank, it's actually +2. And then, of course, if you have 2 ranks, then they can't be steadfast.
Yep.
So it's going to charge somebody in the rear, and again, it could be +3. So, yeah, so little changes like that. Most of the changes, though, I don't feel like, it didn't feel like I was learning a new game, you know. But number 2, I would say it's more of the focus. There is such a focus on trying to find internal and external balance within the Army books, between the Army books. And it's tough to accomplish, and I'm not sure it's objectively possible. It's all based on your perspective. So one thing that I found really funny is when the new Army books came out, there's 16 of them. My guess is about 13 of them, the community on the forums are saying, we got totally screwed, we're a bottom tier army. In 13 out of the 16 books.
Well, and that's possible. It could just be a huge bottom tier, right? You've got 3 books that just win every time, and 13 books that can only fight each other. Yeah. They're just all like the weak, sick kids, and you've got like 3 just A-rods walking around just punching nerds.
Yeah.
That sounds like balance then.
Sure, yeah. If that's the case, then yes, they nailed balance, more or less. Fix the 3, not the 13.
I mean, I was really worried about it because I was looking at our forums, because I spend 95% of my time on the forums, on the Beast Herd forum, and I was really worried. Like, man, I thought we did such a good job with this book, and I guess not. It's, you know, because people are saying it just can't win. It's, you know, it requires synergy, but it's not really there. And I was feeling really bad. And then on a whim, I went to look at other boards, and I saw the exact same types of posts, and I was like, okay, all right, this is a different issue. So anyway, that focus is something it's very different. For me, it's very refreshing, because that was one of my biggest gripes when I was playing Warhammer, was that Games Workshop just didn't seem to care. You know, they put out books that were very disparate. So any comments on that before I move on?
I am a well-known hater of balance and all things balance-related. I think I've made my position on that clear in the past, that I find it to be less important and a fool's errand, but I commend them for at least creating the illusion of it.
That's because you're Timmy.
What's that? Yes, that is because I'm a Timmy. That's correct. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, and but that's fine. I don't think. Obviously, I think they're realistic about it. You know, jokes aside, my impression of the rules committee from just an outsider following this along is that they, and I think maybe this is where community perception differs. I don't think they think, oh, we're going to make perfectly balanced books that under all circumstances everybody always has a 50-50 shot at the start of the game, all else being equal, right? No, I mean that's not a real world. Nobody lives there, right? That's not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is roughly balanced, right? Where it's like you don't start a game and go, well, I might as well pack up shop because this is just a non-starter, right? And you want to get a decent distance away from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've always gravitated towards armies that were a little bit underpowered because I'm a Johnny.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they can't make them all perfectly balanced. There'll be no one for your type of Johnny. If no one's the underdog, then the guy who likes playing the underdog is screwed, right? You can't claim your victory.
Yeah. But at the same time, I'll be the first one to gripe when it's too far underpowered. Like Beastmen were in 8th edition, so I'm, yeah.
Sweet spot. You're like a 2-to-1 guy. You're like the Vegas odds makers are like 2-to-1 against you. You're like, yeah, that's perfect. That's right where I want to be.
Yeah. That being said, that was not my intent to make the Beastman book, the Beast Herd book, another tier army. But I'm just saying, as a player, that's what I like. So number 3, the biggest change is the amount of community interaction that actually matters. Matter of fact, I mean, there's so much activity starting to happen on the forums there that, like, I wonder, are people going to use some of the traditional Warhammer forums? I don't know, but because your ideas have a chance of being heard if they're supported, if there's a lot of other people. There's a lot of ideas that come up, and the next thing you know, there's, they put up a poll and they say, okay, well, if enough people respond to the poll, and if the numbers are high enough, then we'll take it seriously. I mean, that's my approach to it, right? Somebody comes on and they're like, this is horrible. We really need to do this. And my thinking is, well, yes, so you say. But let's make a poll, and if it's if they get enough people to respond to it, and 80% of the people have played it and they agree, then yeah, sure, let's take a look at that.
I like it. No, that's good. As long as there's a check on that, I mean, like obviously, and I know there is. I think the smart part about that is that it all goes through. Like there are gates. That's what you want, right? Of like an issue is raised, you determine the severity of the impact. It goes through some gates as it escalates, and then eventually the change happens, right? Just a change management process.
Right. And of course, the problem is you get some people that are just really vocal. So they get on there and they're screaming about something, and then it's almost like people are saying, "Oh, there's this issue going on." It's like there's no issue with this particular model, this unit. There's no issue. There's one really loud person.
Right.
Yep. So you take the bad with the good. Thinks of the same. The thing that strikes me as the same is. They kept all the army books, and the rule was every model that people have bought must be playable. And so they're striving for internal balance as well, but they're saying you can't cut models out. You can combine 2 units into one, but if people have bought models, they have to be able to play them. So nothing's. It's like the models haven't really changed. Like I don't have any models that are obsolete, and they're models that I've wanted to buy that I can go buy if I want.
Right. No, that's good. Absolutely. Do you know of any example where they did combine 2 into 1? So I think the idea there being you could use either model for it, I assume, right?
I know they've done it. Basically, I want to say it was dwarfs, like where if you look, you might have had dwarf warriors and then dwarf ironbreakers, and the only difference is you actually could make the same unit and have one upgrade, and it'd be the same thing.
Right.
In cases like that, that's where they were saying, "Hey, let's simplify it. Make it one unit. If you have 2 special units and the only difference is this one stat or this piece of equipment or something, just make it one."
I saw that on the like Dark Elves. That's how they did the Beastmaster. Was basically they just took the Dreadlord and added an upgrade to the Dreadlord that made him that gave him basically a Beast Lord ability.
Yeah.
I assume they just bought him a whip, They probably went down to like the corner S&M store, which I assume is about as prevalent in Dark Elf territory as like 7-Elevens in the real world. That's about
Totally.
that. It's about equivalent. And they were just like picked up a whip and they were like, "You're Beastmaster now. Congratulations."
Woohoo.
All right, good stuff. I like it. Anything else on that one before we go to the next question?
No, not really. I think the other thing they did that was big in terms of a change was they toned down shooting a little bit. Not a ton. I think cannons still have a role to play. They toned it down a little bit. Less one-shot kills.
More two-shot kills now, right?
Yeah, two 3-shot kills.
Yeah.
If I'm playing, it's a 2-shot kill, but mathematically it should be a 3-shot kill.
Sure. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Reading through it, what I saw was, are flamethrowers the only war machine that out of the gate can achieve that 0 on the war machine blow-up table? Because I didn't see any other war machines that stock had a -1. But I don't know if maybe there are some in the book, in the Army
Well,
book.
if you found the one, I haven't really looked at it much because, again, it's not my focus right now, the war machines, but I did see that it was a 0 on the table, and I'm like, okay, something's going on. There must be something where they say you have to -1 on the table. So you're saying the flame...
Yeah, the flamethrower weapons get the -1 whenever they misfire. So, like, I assume, for obvious reasons, they're full of liquid hot magma. And so, nobody likes that. That's going to blow up and kill you. Traditionally, the Skaven weapons have all done that. They're all flamey type weapons. So, yeah, I just wondered if there was more. I thought that was interesting to add that 0. I'm a big fan of war machines exploding. That might have been my favorite thing I read because I love them blowing up and killing people near them. It's terrible. It's a terrible thought, and I love it. That's exciting to me.
Yeah, well, I know that our stone thrower, we call him the Cyclops now. What is it? Cygor, I guess, used to be.
Yep.
One thing they insisted on was just have him roll on the misfire table just like everybody else. And in my mind, that means, wow, if I roll a 1, that guy dies. That's a 200-point model. And luckily, the worst that happens is what? You just can't shoot the rest of the game. So.
Yes, apparently he. Well, look. Okay, let me just comment on that real quick. Like that totally makes sense in the case of a war machine. Like the cannon blows itself up so bad that you've got to it's still there. They can drag it off the field at the end of the fight, but they've got to get in and really give it a scrubbing and clean it or something and put broken parts back together. What did the Cygor pull an ACL?
Yeah.
Like through a shoulder muscle? Oh boy! Oh,
cold muscle may not throw.
Yeah. Oh, that's gonna hurt. Oh
yeah. God, the lower back. I've really been getting up in the years. Give me some Excedrin. It's really bad today. Oh man, getting old. Getting too old for this. All right. At any rate, yes, I thought that was funny when applied to war machines like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good. So I thought maybe we'd turn to. Obviously, you were a big part of the Beast Herds book. You were one of the sort of 3, I guess, right? Was the group of people that spearheaded the Beast Herds book. And so I thought maybe you could take us through your process. What was your goal with Beast Herds? What was the process like? And what do you think about the end product, that kind of thing?
Sure. And I should say that this is only from my perspective. I came in not late, but there was some preliminary work before I came in, and I really can't speak to that. I think there was a lot of... We have 2 people that were helping us with support, meaning they did a lot of interacting on the forums, doing polls, generating ideas, and they would come to the committee with stuff, which I guess we could have done directly to the forums. It was just that much more work. But the way it started by the time I got there was, there was what we call the temporary Army compendium. That's when they did a quick Band-Aid on all the Army books so people could start playing. So we kind of started with that, and they had guidelines, and apparently when I look at the book, all the Army books, I'm wondering, there were some people that didn't seem to follow the guidelines. So we were under this mistaken notion that we were supposed to follow the guidelines.
Well, they were just guidelines, I guess, not hard rules. So that's what happened there, I guess.
Yeah, kind of like Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Guidelines. So we couldn't add units. We didn't want to get rid of anything because why do that? So we began with that book, and we kind of went through a round robin process where one of us, Rory, he kind of started with that and kind of created his own books. We came up with some Army special rules, special rules for units. So he created that, and then I sat down one Saturday and looking at his, I kind of created my own, and then he saw mine and he changed his accordingly, and then we were joined by a third committee member, Frederick from Germany, and he saw both of our books, and was engaged in the conversation going back and forth. And he said, "Well, tell you what, let me do a mashup book." And he came up with that, and we said, "Okay, that's actually a pretty good compromise between things we were talking about." And each of these books we created really reflect the individual interests that we had, and they weren't mutually exclusive, but they were sometimes conflicting. So Rory he's been playing Beastman forever, and he is absolutely in love with the 6th edition Beastman book. And so he really wanted it to reflect that flavor. I wanted it to have as many options and tools as possible, so you could build different kinds of lists, and they were viable. And if you were worried about something your opponent might bring, you would have a tool to deal with it. And Frederick just wanted it to be able to win at tournaments. He wanted it to be competitive. So after Frederick's mashup book, we got together and said, "Yeah, let's go with that." And then we just started hammering it out back and forth on the forums. We had Skype sessions. We had several. We had some last just an hour or two. We had some that lasted 3 or 4 hours, just going back and forth, sometimes productively, sometimes arguing. There were things we never resolved. There were moments of bad, hard feelings. I mean, just what you would expect in an effort like that. When we hit a deadline, I think we could have carried on forever in those arguments because we weren't getting anywhere with them. So we finally just said, "Okay, we're just going to vote on everything, 2 out of 3 wins, and we move on." So we had something to submit to the rules team. Now the rules team is 5 people that I think they kind of wrote the whole rule book, and now they were overseeing all the Army books. So they would take our Army book, and then they would express concerns about things and adjust points and stuff like that. But it was all in communication with us. So if they said something, we could come back and say something back to them. And they were doing it individually, not as a group. So all 5 would make comments, but they'd be individual comments. So I might disagree with somebody, and somebody else in the rules team might back me up and say, "Yeah, I agree with OB," and whatever. So we went back and forth a couple times, a couple different iterations with them, and then we submitted to them again. They made last-minute changes without consulting us, and then posted it. And they did that with all the Army books. And they did that because they wanted to meet a deadline, because there's a bunch of tournaments that he committed to 9th Age, and they needed to have their own books ready in time for those tournaments.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
So
now, how do you feel about the overall product as it currently stands? So the Beast Herds book in specific here. Are you happy with how it currently is? I know you're still in an exploration phase with it, which is funny to say, being that you had a hand in writing it, but I completely get that as somebody who's written a lot of games. Tom and I, those conversations you were talking about, I think Tom will also echo me here. I've known Tom for more than 20 years, and we will fight tooth and nail when we're designing an RPG where he wants it one way and I want it another, because we have very different mindsets often on things. Tom is one of those people that likes rules and balance too.
So I'm right there with the OB.
Yeah. Johnny's unite.
and it's just the key is just obviously being able to work it out and get to a good place. And I think having those differing opinions is essential. So I think I'm super glad to hear that. I think it'd be terrible if you all 3 had the same perspective. I think that's the easiest way to get a terrible product.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, and when you look at theories of group interactions, the what is it? Forming, storming, norming, performing. I don't know if you've heard of that, but I think that disagreement is very, very healthy as long as people involved with it are mature about it, right? And, so I'm comfortable when people disagree, argue, get feelings hurt. I mean, actually, I'm weirdly comfortable with that. I think there's value in it. But you asked me about the book. Yes. I love our book. I am such a fan of it, and there are things that I wanted that didn't get in there, and now I kind of see the wisdom. I'm kind of glad it wasn't, because it isn't as good as some things, as the way things turned out. There are things in the book that some people really, really don't like at all, the totems specifically, and I think they're fantastic. I think they're competitive and they're really fun. So I can tell you just a couple examples, and I'm blending into question 3 right now, by the way.
Oh, that's
So,
fine.
so we're trying to be a MSU, or you could go Horde, but really aggressive, really mobile, ambushing, hard-hitting, yet fragile. Not a lot of toys. And that's so we kind of tried to work with that theme. And so, we ambush. I mean, almost every unit in the book can ambush. We have ambushing giants, which just makes me so happy.
They're very sneaky. They're like the T-Rex from the first Jurassic Park when he just sneaks in and grabs those raptors, right? Just with stealth
Yes.
giants. I like it.
And I'm going to use that example because one guy in the rules team said, "I don't like this." He goes, "I can understand these little guys crawling through the woods, but this giant's not going to stealthily sneak up behind you." And now I'm going to say, "Have you seen Jurassic Park?"
There you go. Absolutely.
Yeah. So also, you know how the Centaurs have the drunken rule and you have to roll on the table and stuff? And Frederick and I just were like, I do not want to roll on that table. I can't stand not being able to plan for the game, not knowing what I have. And Centaurs are tough because they're not really good cavalry. They're not heavy cavalry by any means, and they're not really fast cavalry by any means. So what we did is we changed the drunken rule that said before the game starts, you can choose if they're sober or drunk. And if you choose sober, they can vanguard and have free reform. So they're like a really heavy fast cav.
Mm-hmm.
If they're drunk, they get, I think I could be wrong on this, but it's they're immune to psychology and thunderous charge, so +1 strength in the charge. So they're not quite as good as heavy cavalry, but they hit like a ton of bricks. I mean, they have primal instinct, so they're re-rolling to hit if they pass the leadership test. 2 attacks each. They can get up to strength 7 on the charge. Because they're strength 4, their weapon works like a lance, so strength 6, and with the thunderous charge, strength 7. 2 attacks each, re-rolling to hit strength 7 is nothing to sneeze at. So
no, that is definitely the definition of a ton of bricks. Holy crap, yeah.
Yeah, but people complain. They're like, well, they're still only T4, and their armor save is, I think it's a 5-up, so give or take. So they're fragile. And I'm like, yes.
Right.
So
that's
what
makes them interesting. If they did everything, they'd be the only unit you took. Right, yeah.
Yes. So these guys are somewhat fragile, but you know what? You can ambush with them. So you don't have to worry about turn 1 shooting. You're going to have to worry about 1 turn of shooting when you ambush, and they're going to have to be facing with their butt to the rest of your army in order to shoot at you.
Yep.
So then and this was Frederick's idea, I think. I hope I'm getting the right place. He came up with an upgrade called Looted Booze. So if you take the Centaur character, he can bring liquor with him. So you can start your Centaurs off sober and get all the fast cav benefits, and then when you're ready to charge, you can say, drink the liquor, boom, now they're drunk. I'm thinking, these guys, this is so awesome. Like, it's not over the top. Like it's a little bit over the top in terms of weirdness, but it's not broken. They have severe weaknesses, but there's some real flexibility there, and there's flavor that is very, very unique. So I'm very, very proud of that unit. I think we just did a really good job, and I think ironically I'm so proud of them, but I don't think I had a whole lot of influence in that design. I think I was just on the sidelines cheering as Rory and Frederick bounce these ideas back and forth. So
I think we'll know how successful you were if on the like Warhammer site, we suddenly see Centaur go out of stock because they all sold out. That's going to be your mark of quality right there. If suddenly everybody's buying up the Centaur, that's going to be a real sign that you've nailed it.
Well, what I don't get is I'm looking at people posting the lists that they're using. They're saying, well, here's the list I'm going to use this weekend, and it's like 30 Centaur. And I'm like, where the hell did you get these models? Nobody had those models before. Nobody used them. How is it the book came out 2 weeks ago and you already have 30 of these bad boys? I don't know.
I'm guessing those are just normal ponies that they're riding in there. Like, that's just people repurposing horses that they have rolling around.
Yeah, could be. So we put that same drunken rule on the giant, which doesn't actually affect the game too much. I just think it's awesome. So you can have a vanguarding giant. I mean, he has free reform anyway, but so he's not immune to psychology. So if you take him where you can vanguard, if you need to, you can flee a charge, which is kind of cool. Or you can make him drunk and he's immune to psychology and gets +1 strength, which again, you're up to like strength 7 again. Yeah, and you can ambush, which I just think is really cool.
Yeah, I love the ambushing giant. Exactly. And anytime someone questions it, as I said, you just think of that climax scene. If a T-Rex can sneak up on somebody, what I love is even earlier in the film, he's like shaking the water, right?
Yeah,
Like, just a step. But then in that scene, he shows up and like no one saw him coming, just out of nowhere. So he can ninja soaking a giant. That's what I say.
Yeah, there's not a leaf fluttering in the.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So I love it. That's great. And I certainly have always loved an underdog. I do empathize certainly with you on that. I've always shied away and hated what I saw to be like top tier armies. Basically, the surest way that I'll collect a force is if it's the garbage force right now. That's generally my sign that it's time to get on board. If it's crap and barely playable, that's the one for me. I like it. So I'm always glad to see the underdogs get brought up some. It's a happy moment. When you play the most powerful people, all you're setting yourself up for is to get kneecapped later, because that's what's coming. You're just walking out into the. Let me tell you, people playing powerful top-tier armies in any game, I don't care what it is. Okay, you're playing a top deck in Magic. You're playing whatever it happens to be. If you're playing the best thing out there that you know is powerful, congratulations on your eventual kneecapping and hurt feelings over losing your toys, because that's what you've got staring at you. When I'm playing the underpowered crap, all I've got to look for, there's nowhere to go but up. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, you're in the no-lose situation.
Exactly. All right. So this next question that I had for you, I think is really important, because I think that obviously we've got a very busy field right now. The hobby is in a lot of sort of tumult, and people are trying a lot of games, and I think that's a good thing. Like I wouldn't have played Malifaux had not been for this change, and I did, and I really liked it. I thought it was a really fun, super cool game, good figs. I really liked the interplay, and I liked the setting and stuff like that. So it made me try some new things, which I thought was great. And I think everybody should be trying a lot of these games and find the one that you actually have fun with. And so my question for you was, if there's somebody out there, somebody watching this, they're on the fence on trying Ninth, what would you tell them to push them over the edge? Why should they give Ninth? Basically, not that you're the necessary sales rep for Ninth, but for a lot of people watching, you're very much the face of a lot of Warhammer on YouTube. So what's your pitch here?
Well, for me, so if somebody is looking for something in a game, that's the same thing I'm looking for. I would say, in terms of if you like the 8th edition, in terms of the feel of the game, big, large troops, lots of stuff going on, you like the intricacy of the decisions that have to be made in terms of the magic phase and movement and stuff like that. This is like 8th edition without all the bugs. I mean, if you like that, that's what this is, except for the things that were obnoxious that made games not fun, for the most part, aren't there. So that's what I like about it. I like the I've noticed so far, I've gone locally to some gaming groups that they gave up on 8th edition a year and a half ago. They just haven't been playing it. They had nothing to do with it. They just sit down and talked to them a little bit about the Ninth Age and the new army books and stuff like that. And I hear people getting excited again, like, oh, yeah, I want to try that out. It's like there's new life in it. And I think that's what it is. I think there was something about the game that just bugged them. This issue of things not being balanced, I mean, the real problem with that is when you have somebody that's really good and really studies the game, not only is he going to be good at it anyway, but he knows all the loopholes to take advantage of all those imbalances. And that makes it just really suck for somebody that would otherwise be a pretty good player but just doesn't have the inclination to study it that deeply. And I think a lot of those are the people who left. So I think those people you're going to see coming back because they like the game, they want to play it, they just were tired of the same old frustrations.
Good. All right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that what's, just my own 2 cents from nothing, again, from a total outsider perspective, I think what is interesting to me about it is the community-driven nature of it and the fact that it's got so much involvement. That's all the things you mentioned earlier. I am obviously a fan of sort of self-made, community-driven, smaller things. You know, being that I've been an indie RPG publisher for 10 years, so I certainly have and place value on creators who are willing to go the mile and do the work and work in those smaller communities to build something good. And I just have nothing but the utmost respect for the whole team that got together and led this effort. I mean, this is a massive effort that the steering committee and the rules committee and all these people are guiding here. And I know how hard it is to herd like the 5 people that are involved in my projects around. You know, these people were certainly herding a lot more cats than that.
Mm-hmm.
So to do that and to carry it through to this point even is unbelievably impressive, and to put out a pretty decent product, which by all accounts it certainly is something that's absolutely worthy of your respect. Whether you out there are somebody who's interested in this or not, I think that it has to be total respect given to the contributors of this project, the people who've contributed so many hours and so much blood, sweat, tears, and love to make this and to make this game that so many other people are going to enjoy. And I think it's easy to just kind of show up, especially since these rules are free, to show up and just be a taker and complain or something like that. I'm not down with that. Like, a lot of people did this of their own volition and their own free time, and I think we all should highly value that. It's a worthwhile thing, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I am. I don't think I appreciated how much work was being put into this until I was brought into it. And I'm not saying look how much work I've done. I think I'm pretty consistently at about 20 hours a week, and I don't think I'm one of the top workers on this by any stretch. There are, you know, this is our passion. If wargaming is your hobby, this is what you do, and I think there's a sense of we got to get it right. We have to make this work, because if this doesn't work, what's the alternative? You know, for us, you know, Age of Sigmar doesn't work. It's more of a Timmy game. It's not really a Johnny game, and I think this game is designed by a lot of Johnnies. And if you don't know what we're talking about, please see one of Vince's previous videos. What's the name of that video, Vince?
Psychographic profiles in Warhammer. I'll put it down below just so everybody can go check it out. So we're not losing anybody on the terminology, but yes.
Yeah, I think you know, in that terminology, Spikes and Timmys can still enjoy the game, but it's made by and for Johnnies. There's no doubt about it, in my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, tremendous amount of work and pretty organized. You know, you can always complain about stuff, but pretty freaking organized when you consider starting from scratch and all that's going on with it. So.
Yeah, 100%. So then that leads, I think, into what's probably my final sort of big question for you, which is, what is your best case scenario trajectory for Ninth? In other words, where do you want to see this go next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, something like that? And I mean, of course, pie in the sky, you know, whatever, that's fine. We all know that, but I mean, what's your sort of realistic take on it, as it were?
I don't know. I mean, in Europe, I think Ninth Age is going to be the fantasy battle game, hands down. I mean, the fact that the ETC adopted Ninth Age over Age of Sigmar and over Kings of War and 8th edition, that's huge. That's huge ramifications, because all the people that are tournament players, I think, will be playing Ninth Age more than other games by a large margin. Here in the States, the Masters community never came to a consensus. There were some regions that opted for Kings of War. There's much more of a splintering here. And so the trajectory I would like to see is for us to get enough of a following in the States that we can get the old Masters circuit back, where all the regions of the country have at least 4 or 5 major grand tournaments a year. They feed into a Masters, and we're good. I mean, it doesn't take that many players to do. I mean, it can exist side by side with Age of Sigmar, with Kings of War, and whatever. I mean, you know, the pond doesn't have to be that big.
Right.
I'm actually optimistic now. I think a couple months ago I wasn't optimistic that it could take off, and I feel like I'm seeing it take off. I'm talking to disenchanted players and seeing them get excited again, and I'm feeling for myself more excitement that I felt in this hobby for probably 3 years. 4 years, maybe. I mean, if you follow my channel, you've probably seen a slow decline over the years. And I don't think it's just because I'm involved in the creation of it. I think it's because it's just kind of fun. Like a lot of the stuff that was just wearing me down is gone. So that's my goal for it, and I'm optimistic that'll happen. Some of the biggest tournaments, Buckeye Battles in Ohio, they've committed to running ninth age. So some of the big ones, we're going to at Brawler Bash, which is the largest tournament in this part of the country. I know that we're going to have ninth age there. Now it might be ninth age and Kings of War for a year or two until we see which one, if one takes the lion's share. But I don't know. I think that's what I hope for, and I think that's probably going to happen.
Fair enough. I also think it's fascinating that we live in a time, and I've mentioned this on the show before, where I can own one product.
Yep.
Tom was the one who brought this up before, right? I can own one product, these models, and basically use them for 3 very disparate games, all simultaneously. Like, certainly if you want mastery, there is a level of focus you need, but if that's not your concern, right, if your concern is just to play the games and have fun, it is a pretty crazy time to live in that I can go to I have this one thing, these miniatures. I can go to an Age of Sigmar game or one week. I can go to a ninth age game the next week. It's all fine. You know what I mean? Like that's a pretty crazy world that I have so many different options off of one set of sort of product to make it all happen.
Technically 4 games if you want to include all the incarnations of Mordheim.
Sure, Frostgrave and all that stuff too. Yeah.
Yep.
Good point.
Yeah. So one thing, I'll throw this out there, not to share somebody else's good news, but
no.
So I've been kind of reaching out, and Anthony from the Sustainable Center reached out to me, and I think we've pulled him back in. I think you're going to see his channel become active with ninth age battle reports again.
Nice.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So if you unsubscribe from Anthony because he left the hobby, you may want to go back and check his channel out again. I did the same with Mallory, and I offered to start a GoFundMe project to pay for his travel to come down here to Brawler Bash. And he said no. I'm like, you're such a pansy. He said, no, I'm into something else now. But we got Anthony back. So
there you go. Warhammer Weekly exclusive. All right, Ant, you're on the hook now, buddy. It's been announced. Write it down. I'm putting it in the comments, like big text, like Ant's coming back. TSC 9th Age exclusive. OB breaks the story. You heard it here first. No, I love it. And it's the kind of thing where, you mentioned going to see Materum. I would again, I would have. It's a shame that he's. I'd love to see him give it a shot. Just give it a game because I think it would preserve a lot of things he likes as well. So there you go.
yeah.
I think you're right. I think that there's what I think is the best thing about it, maybe in the end for me, is that whatever you think of Age of Sigmar, and I happen to love it. Whatever you think of Kings of War, I think it's okay to good. But whatever you think of those two things, there simply is a segment of the population that was not served by those games, right? And they just weren't spoken to. Their psychographic needs were not being met by those games. That's just the reality of the thing. It's not about hating one thing or not. It's just that's how it was. And I love that this gives those players that option to get engaged, to be gaming again, to get together, to paint some miniatures, to put some things on the table, and to smash your friend's face. That's what this is all about, right? So I think it's good. I think it creates a really nice landscape, honestly. I would love to see all of this sort of exist side by side, and the market grow accordingly, because I think it's a healthier landscape than maybe it used to be with one hegemonic entity. That was kind of like, in the end, like if Warhammer 8 wasn't your game, if that didn't speak to you, there wasn't really any kind of Warhammer that you could play then, right? That was it. That was the option.
Right. Yeah.
You had to like that particular roast of coffee. I want my Warhammer like I like my spaghetti sauces, just all over the place, or my coffees. You got a lot of different roasts. This can be you got the pumpkin spice latte some time of the year. You just got some kind of other garbage the rest of the year. I don't drink coffee, so this is a bad metaphor for me to go down this road. But it doesn't matter. There we go. All right. So, by the way, Merrick had commented that the 2 people talking that we mentioned earlier when we were talking about Slaanesh is a Slann talking to a herald of Slaanesh, and when he tells her what's really happened, the herald is just like, oh, and starts crying and shit. So There you go. That's the. I feel like we've really added a lot by having that clarification.
Glad we settled that.
Yes, absolutely. No, but I appreciate it, Merrick. Thank you, sir. All right. So, Obi, any final thoughts on Ninth Age as we come to the end of the show here? Oh, go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah, no, I just had, like, so, obviously, like, looking through Ninth Age stuff, I noticed that there were a couple of fantastic things. Like, you guys, like, so one of the commitments that you guys have said is that you're going to be adding new units. Like, I noticed that, like, the Orc and Goblin book had an idol of Gorg in it. Like, or the equivalent, like the rogue idol previously, and that can be a BSB, and it's kind of this neat thing. And so, do you can you reflect at all on the direction of design stuff? Is it going to be filling gaps in armies, or what is kind of the idea there?
I think that's exactly it. The guidance that I've seen is that, you know, when we get the next iteration of books, when they're timed, let's keep them fresh. If you want to suggest a new unit, it needs to fill a role in the army that's not currently being filled. And which I kind of like. I mean, I think there's a danger when you try to get every army to have everything. So we just need to guard against that. But I think there's just going to be a need to add new things just to keep it fresh. You know, just you want new toys. So I mean, I can open the Storm of Magic book and point to several things I'd like to have in the Beastman book.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other question I had is, and it's actually related to the same unit. I noticed that they had a 100 by 100 base. Are you guys planning on doing new base sizes?
That's over my pay grade. I haven't even looked at the Orc and Goblin book, or after the time I don't know what's called in this.
I just didn't know if there was design direction that way towards, or if there were design restrictions that was just a typo in the book. And so I was just kind of curious. There were no guidelines for it, and my guess is if they got it in, it's not a typo. I mean, it might be, but it could be they just said, this is what we want, and this is why. I mean, having a large base is a detriment more than an advantage. So they might have been saying, we want it really powerful, and we're willing to make it on a huge base because of it. And I guess, was there some kind of model that existed? It's an old out-of-print Forge World pile of rocks. There's no other way to describe it.
You can also build it by going out into your garden and them to try this.
Yes. The flip side, though, is that was on a 100 by 150 base, and so it was just a real curious decision to actually have an abnormally sized square base, like something 100 by 100, which doesn't.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so it was just a real interesting decision. And I was just curious if that's, from a design standpoint, if that's one direction that the team is going or whatnot. So.
Yeah. No, don't know.
Cool.
That's good, Tom. I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. It just
no.
I haven't given you like any chance to talk this episode. Your two fans are gonna be very upset with me for not having you much conversation.
Hey, but we are talking about Ninth Age, and largely like we had an established conversation that was going on. Yeah.
Yes. So. No, that's fine. Well, very good. And Tom, anything else you wanted to ask? Because now's the time. We have the authority right here. That's how we set you up, Obi. That's it. You're now the authority.
No, it looks good. I was skeptical of Ninth Age initially, and looking and reading through the materials and flipping through the books and stuff like that, I was encouraged by what I saw. So I was in the initial crowd that said they're changing way too much, way more than they need to be changing, if they're aiming to capture the same crowd. But looking back through and reading through the materials, reading through the main book and stuff like that, it's encouraging what you guys have created.
Yeah, and I mirror that. I mean, I was in that same crowd, and like you said, like YouTube noticed, they kind of did tone down the changes in the main rule book. But if you want to see a lot of changes, the Army books have all the changes. And the funny thing is, that wasn't the rules team doing it. That's where the rules team backed off, and they invited more players in, and the players, there's a lot more variety, I think, and a lot more changes in the specific Army books.
Hey. My Goblin Big Boss can ride in a Ragnarok now, and that's all I was complaining about in my wish list of what would happen.
Right there.
Yeah, is I can put a big boss on an Ragnarok, and I was like, done. I'm in.
And that model should have 0 attacks. The Goblin Big Boss should have 0 attacks on the back of that spider.
Nope.
There
And
is no way he's getting down there to stab whoever's underneath that spider. It's not happening.
And he still has his 8 dudes. Like, he has his 8 dudes and him riding in on
Oh,
that.
they form like a Goblin Muppet Man. And then, like, all 8 of them lower him down to stab the guy. Okay, I got it. No, it all makes sense now.
He should only be able to attack against large targets.
Right. Exactly. He's going to stab something at his height, yes.
As a side note, that is one thing that I actually noticed that you guys haven't talked about was the use of, like, it was very surprising to me, and I had to think through the implications design-wise of this, but it was the implementation of units as base sizes of, like, small, medium, and large, and then how that actually blocks line of sight. So, like, there's a tactical level that got implemented there of, like, you can actually screen for your own troops with larger base size models.
Yeah, that didn't strike me as new because ETC comp always had that kind of stuff in there.
Oh, that's fair. But from
so
8th and from those that weren't, yeah, good.
Yeah, it was just a way of saying, walk blocks line of sight. If you have a dragon behind a hill, true line of sight says you can see the dragon, and you're like, but conceptually it's a hill. Even if it's a big dragon, it should be hidden, that kind of stuff.
Right, but putting your rock monster in a spot now to block your unit of archers standing behind, well, at least screening, not obviously, like, they won't be able to shoot over, but being able to screen for, like, cannons and things like that if they need to, are an option now.
Yeah, sure, and it would block it both ways. I mean, your archers wouldn't be able to see anything past that.
Right.
So.
But it adds a level of tactics that actually wasn't there in the prior edition, which is what I'm kind of putting my finger on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Games Workshop they were doing some baby steps towards Age of Sigmar where they were trying to simplify it a little bit, just make it a less cumbersome game. And yeah, I think Ninth Age is trying to make it. I mean, I don't know. There's just a balance to be had to try to find between, not too much complexity, but having it be realistic and tactical and all that.
Absolutely, that's kind of the eternal game design. The
challenge, yes.
Yes.
Like Johnny Cash, you're always struggling to walk the line. Absolutely. All right. Well, very good. We're more or less at our time. OB, any final thoughts before we call it a night here?
No, man. Thanks for having me on. It's been a long time. I don't know if your viewers know this, but you and I had a sleepover at your house this summer. And,
that is true.
I loaned you my pajamas. I'd like them back at some point, but
I curl up with them still every night. I kept the braids in my hair for like 2 days afterwards, so it was fun.
Yeah. If I get the chance to do it again, I'm going to plan a couple extra days. I'm going to buy an airbrush system, and I'm just going to sit and paint with you in your house so you can teach me all the neat little tips and tricks you have. Anyway, but thanks for having me on, man. It's good to spend some time with both of you again.
Absolutely, sir. Total pleasure. And yes, if you're coming up for, I mean, at bare minimum, if you're coming up for Buckeye next year, of course I'm going to go, and of course you've got a place. You know that's forever true anytime. So, 100%. We'll set aside some time. We'll do some painting, some more. We'll see if we can get Parsley back up here as well. Maybe we'll get him, drinking again. My wife can prepare the same Long Island's, and I mean, it's gonna be tough. How much of the Spartan lifestyle he's living? He could go for the total clean living and just turn himself around by then. You never know.
Yeah, probably.
All right, well, sir, absolute pleasure. For all of you out there, we thank you very much for watching, as always. I will, of course, link OnceBitten's channel down below. Not that any of you need it. You all are already subscribed to him, of course. But, as always, I'll link that. As I mentioned, if you didn't get a catch it yet, he did put up a 9th Age battle report with his Beastmen. Go check that out. I'll link the psychographic profiles in gaming down below, as well as the link for the Mordheim that I mentioned at the top of the show. But thank you all very much. OB, thank you very much, sir. You know you're welcome back anytime. We love to have you. And for all of you out there, as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.